Hey, Future Lawyer. Welcome to the LSAT Simplified podcast presented by Hey Future Lawyer, where we talk about all things LSAT, law school admissions, and otherwise. If you want to check out our free LSAT course, go to heyfuturelawyer.com to sign up for a free account today. Hey, everyone. So my dogs are running around like crazy today, but I think Zoom, which I use to record the podcast, actually does a pretty good job of filtering out the noise. So hopefully they do not get picked up too much. Anyways, today we're talking about a few things. First off, we're going to talk about a bit of a guru effect in the LSAT world, which I'm starting to see more and more of. And it kind of feels more like drop shipping MLM shit. And honestly, I hate that. So we're going to hit on that. We're also going to talk about the delay between doing your LSAT prep and reviewing and why that's a problem. We are going to talk about why you should start studying now if you are applying to law school this upcoming fall. We're also going to go through a individual listener's situation with law school. And then finally, we're going to hit on a essay that was professionally, well, quote unquote, professionally reviewed by a prominent consulting company. And basically, we're going to have to flame it because it's not in a great situation. I don't blame the person who submitted it. I blame the person who, for lack of a better term, kind of scammed you. So anyway, starting with kind of the guru effect. So when I say the guru effect, I mean people kind of telling you like, I am the chosen one. Everyone else in the LSAT world is full of bullshit, and I have the secrets that no one else will tell you. It's often correlating with the kind of shortcuts, as in it's like, oh, it's not that the LSAT is hard, it's that you've been misled by all these other people. Because like one of the tough things about LSAT is that if you are a smart person and a hard worker, you will kind of succeed no matter where you go, assuming you put in the time. You can use the worst LSAT prep, and if you're smart and hardworking and willing to evaluate what's working and what's not, you will still get better. When I studied for the LSAT, I used resources that are honestly not great, and I still had success because I was the common denominator, and I worked hard, I showed up, and I reviewed. And honestly, I, ignored a decent amount of the stuff they said. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't want good LSAT prep. Like, obviously you should. It is easier when you have it, I guess, given to you in a straightforward way, but you shouldn't need it. And what's frustrating is there's these people, and there's not, I mean, it's not too many, but anyways, it's like when you get a YouTube ad trying to sell you some stuff, and it's like, oh, like, this is what the elites don't want you to know. Here's how you're going to make 6 figures a day. And I'm starting to see marketing like that in the LSAT world. And honestly, I mean, in a weird way, like if it works on you, I guess you probably aren't going to crush the LSAT anyways. But it's crazy because, I mean, the big ones aren't made up words. So there's a few offenders of this, but it's when people start making stuff up as if it matters. Like, for example, if I give you an acronym like view stamp or CLIR, none of this is real. These are not actual LSAT things, but people make them up, partly because it's like an in-group, out-group thing, where if like you study with Ben for LSAT prep, and I have my made-up word, it makes it non-transferable. So you have to study with me. And often these are concepts that are not terribly crazy. I mean, one of the big ones, and this is one person who I think really falls into the whole guru mindset, and I'll just say who it is because like we're kind of going down that route anyways. And anyone with like half a second of Googling could figure this out. But it's this woman, Ellen Cassidy, who wrote The Loophole, which is an interesting book, and it has helped people. But in it, it's basically a very long doctrine of how to read. Her program is focused on people that are illiterate. And I don't mean they can't actually read words, but people that don't do any thought process as they read. And that is a problem. Like I also have to work with a lot of people that just blast through the LSAT and don't read properly. But it's done in a way to where people think it's like groundbreaking shit to like teach active reading. And it's like, no, it's not groundbreaking stuff. And like admittedly, she did a very good job packaging it and marketing it. She's done a great job. But part of that has been rebranding these things as like she has all these terms that she has. It's actually pretty amusing. If you look in the cover of her book, there's like all these things she's copyrighted. But there's like one called the loophole. And the loophole is basically a break in an argument. How the premise is not the same thing as the conclusion. And that's the loophole. I would call it a broken argument or a flaw, but she brands it as such. And I guess that like gives clout. It's unfortunate that it works because people actually think there's like something groundbreaking that she's come up with. And in all reality, she's probably better LSAT prep than like most LSAT prep out there. I'm willing to concede that. But what I am not willing to concede is that it's gross that she is like branding it in such a way because like realistically, it's trying to create kind of an in-group, out-group guru mentality. And if you're like, Ben, that's kind of aggressive for someone who's like written an LSAT book and is just a competitor. Well, let me tell you about her tutoring prices because this woman charges $1,050 per hour with a minimum weekly meeting of 2 hours. So you are spending $2,100 a week or $8,400 a month if you are working with her. And like, I have no issue with the free market. If people are willing to pay that, that is fine. Like get your bag, Ellen. Good for you. What I will say is that there's absolutely no way that she's worth that much because there are very comparable choices to get, equivalent prep. And that being said, if you're a rich kid where like money literally doesn't matter and you want to work with this person for the personality or for the, quote unquote expertise, not to say she's not an expert, so I should be careful with what I say, but rather that I don't know. I kind of get an aversion to these gurus, and it's like kind of guru energy. It's like Ty Lopez. Like the only thing I love more than Lamborghinis is books, and it's like okay, if you have your like little made up words. I mean, part of me is always like, should I turn my concepts into little made up words to create this whole in-group out-group thing? It seems like it's good for marketing, but then I go, wait a sec, I'm an adult and I have ethics. Because now there's this other kid popping up, and I have no idea what he teaches, but he scored a 180 and he'll start videos by saying like, I will tell you things that no one else will tell you in the world of LSAT. It's like, buddy, like that's just not true. Like these things are not secrets. And for what's worth, if any of your LSAT prep is telling you secrets, it's because it's not real. Like I don't own how I approach the LSAT. I approach the LSAT in the way that I think makes sense. I think it's common sense. And what the value I bring when I teach LSAT is the fact that I've like built a platform which has code and whatnot so that it works well for you, serves you up questions, has explanations built in. But fundamentally, there's nothing proprietary there. There's nothing that I own. I mean, and the good thing is it doesn't really have to be because like, good luck. If you're some LSAT person who wants to pull it off, it's not easy to build a website and to film 6,000 explanations. But if you want to, like, there's nothing stopping you. You have to do it in a way that makes sense. Like I'm fortunate to where I've been doing this for 5 years full time. And so I've really learned how to communicate these ideas in ways that make sense. But I don't know, maybe I should say I have like the only way to the LSAT. It's because part of you is like, how the fuck does this work? But it works on some people. I guess I was, I guess I've been too smart to fall for like the Ty Lopez marketing. But then again, the reason people do this is because it works. And I mean, this other kid who's really kind of falling into like the guru marketing, it's funny. He scored a 180, which I have no reason to doubt that. So I believe it. But what he does say is he's the only Latino to have scored a 180. It's like, buddy, there's no data on that. So he's making this claim about being the only Latino to score 180, but there's literally no way of knowing that. He's just assuming that no other Latino scored a 180. There very well could be Latinos that scored 180s and just didn't talk about it. So it's just amusing that he's like, I'm the only one. And it's like, how the fuck could you know that? That's not even possible to know. I mean, if I just let me just look at the LSAC data real quick, because they put out the test taking data. And in this, you can see how many people of a certain ethnicity have scored certain races. If you want to find this, just Google LSAC interactive current volume summary. And it'll pull up a map and you can filter by all sorts of things. Because last year, there were 2,000 people that scored a 175 to 180. And if you filter by Hispanics, there were 115. I have no idea how many of those scored 175s, 176s, 177s, 178s, or 180s. But what I do know is that there are 115 of them. Is it truly likely that 114 scored a 175 to 179 and this one literal dude scored a 180? It's possible, but he has no way of saying that. And I have a real issue when I see people like make marketing claims that just are not true. I mean, another one is like the 10,000 hours. Like I've done 10,000 hours of tutoring. Sorry, I should clarify. I have not done 10,000 hours of tutoring, but I saw someone who posted that they'd done 10,000 hours of tutoring. And like I've done an absurd amount of LSAT. I don't know that I've done 10,000 hours because like how many years of your life is that just doing it full time? 10,000 hours is 416 days full time. So if you did 8 hours a day, that would be 1,200 days. So how many years is that? That's a lot of years. I don't think I've done 10,000 hours LSAT, but you don't need to. But it's like sexy marketing shit. It's like I've done 10,000 hours LSAT. It's like, no, you fucking haven't because you've only been doing this for 2 years. Do you not sleep? Like, what are you talking about? And anyways, it's just a frustration because it's like, guys, like you guys can tell the truth in your marketing and also like sell people. Like people still want to buy LSAT prep. Like the fuck are you doing? Anyways, so it frustrates me. I would just say be careful out there. I will note that I'm kind of like preaching to the choir here because the podcast crew, which I think I've mentioned this in the past, but you all tend to be a little bit more skeptical of claims than other folks. Like when I get a podcast student that reaches out to me, having found me through the podcast, or someone that found me through Instagram, it's not universal that they're better, but they're often better and like more serious people. I don't know why that is, whether it's the consumption of like long form versus short form content, or maybe the fact that they just like get to know my approach better. So it kind of self-selects out people that are not going to work hard. But anyways, it's just kind of an interesting fascination, or not. It's not an interesting fascination. It is fascinating that we have these kind of effects and that people keep doing this stuff. Because I mean, the really actionable advice here is if someone's making up words when they're telling you about the LSAT, it's not real. Like if they're talking about like conclusions or like, hey, that's the contrapositive, like I disagree with like an over focus on that stuff, but at least it's like functionally real items. if they're talking about like the booba luba or something, like it's like it's not fucking real. They're just making stuff up, and they're making it up because that way they can paint themselves as a guru. And I mean, it's like not all that different than like what Charles Manson did. Like it's a lot of these people are applying like legitimately these psychological tactics that cult leaders do to like try to build an LSAT little cult. It's crazy when you actually think about it. And it's because it works on human psychology. Like people fall for this shit. So don't fall for that. Don't fall for the cults. I truly believe that we have awesome LSAT prep at Hey Future Lawyer. I think our free course is the best. I'm obviously biased. I think that we give you the best shot at crushing the LSAT in a given time frame if you work with us. Also, I'm under no delusions that we're the only way to do LSAT, because what the fuck? Like that's an insane claim to make for anyone to make. Like no one can say that, but people do say that. So just be careful out there. Like it's a crazy market. Anyways, another thing. So I was recently talking to someone, and we were just talking about their weekly study schedule and just the delay between their taking a section and reviewing. So I'm just finding this email in my inbox. So yeah, what they had told me is that here's their breakdown that they've been doing. So on Monday, they do a logical reasoning section. And on Tuesday, they review the wrong answers from that logical reasoning section. And there's a bit of an issue here because when you make a mistake, you want to review it relatively quickly so that it gets like seared into your mind as far as what you did wrong. When you come back to a LSAT question 24 hours later, it's often hard to remember exactly what didn't click and exactly what, like why you missed the question that you missed. Because like, what even was your thought process? 24 hours later, you may remember, you may not. So I would tend to advocate that you are doing the review right after and immediately reviewing it. That should only be like an hour to two of prep, because realistically, you take an LR section, that'll be like 35 minutes. I guess if you're accommodated, it could be more time. It could be like 53 minutes or 70 minutes. But even still, if you have more time, that should lead to you having more, like fewer mistakes. And then I would, from those mistakes, review them, which like, let's be real, it should take you like no more than an hour. So yeah, I mean, I don't know why you're breaking it up further. I would just say you have to do more. Like I don't often tell people they have to do more LSAT prep. I tend to be more on the side of like do a little bit every day. But doing 3 sections a week, which is, or sorry, 2 sections a week is just not going to get it done. And I guess if you have like unlimited time, that's fine. Because real quick, I'll bank through the rest of this person's weekly schedule. On Wednesday, they do a reading comp section. And then on Thursday, they review that same section. Then on Friday, they say they do a couple LR questions, which is not good enough. Like you're going to have to do more than that. I mean, it's funny. I'm almost never the person advocating do more LSAT prep. I'm usually advocating. Although the more I talk to people, the more I think maybe I should. Because I've always recommended the roughly 1 section a day with review as kind of a benchmark of good LSAT prep. But I mean, I'm blown away by how few people even do that. So like, I guess it depends where you're at. If you're like, I have to study full time for the LSAT, in that case, do less. However, if you're like not doing a section a day, I would change that, because that's where you're really going to make progress. So anyways, this person does a section one day, they review the following. The issue there is that they're going to have a difficult time even like correcting their mistakes, because when you like look back at a question, often the wrong answer is going to be like, how did you pick that wrong answer? That's so wrong. And if you don't remember like where you were at thought process wise, it's going to be really hard to learn from that. So you're going to have a difficult time learning. They also continued that they struggle a lot with reading comp. They say they try to break down the sentences to understand them more. Once I get to the questions, I tend to go back to the passenger law, and I think it's taking too much time to do that. Yeah, it's hard to know exactly what's going wrong, but you know, I don't see anything wrong there. Like it's fine. You should be breaking down sentences, and then you should be going back at least for some questions. You know, questions where where it's like, what did the author say? You want to make sure you're not just operating off memory, because the human memory is a little finicky. So I don't see anything wrong there, but it is possible you're not reading terribly well the first time through. I don't know if that's the case, but it could be. Anyways, though, the point is that when you do a section, you have to review it relatively quickly. If you are waiting days and days to review questions you got wrong, you're just not going to get the same value from it. And like further, you also have to do volume. This person is doing 2 sections a week with like a couple of questions thrown in on Friday, and they say they don't study on the weekends. I'm not here to tell you how you should or should not prioritize your LSAT prep. What I am here to tell you is that's not good enough in terms of improvement. Like if that's all the time you have, that's fine. But like you should expect to study for the next, I don't know, while. Like it might be a year of studying at that pace. Whether or not that's like worth it for you is a separate question, but that is a very long time and is going to be difficult to improve with only doing that much LSAT prep. Which once again, if that's what you want, totally chill. If you want to go to LSAT prep anytime, or sorry, LSAT anytime soon, I would really crank up the pace at which you're doing the LSAT. All right, cool. Which gets us to why you should be studying now if you're applying for this fall. I really think you should be studying, and just to like timeline this because, this is a podcast and hence people listen to it at all points in the future. Today is Friday, March 28th, 2025. And applications for law school open on September 1st, which is roughly 5 months away because not a math guy, but I know April is the 4th month. September is the 9th month. 9 minus 4 equals 5. You got roughly 5 months to go. And the LSAT is a bit of a finicky thing where you don't know how long it's going to take you until you start. For many people, it isn't that long of a process and you'll be done in 2 to 3 months. But for all those people, there are people where it takes 6 to 7 months and you just don't know where you're going to fall until you start studying. So I would start studying ASAP because here's the situation. Let's say that you start studying now and you're fast and you get it done. Well, then you're ready to take either June or August and you just apply in September. But let's say you're like, oh, I'll study for 3 months, which often when people hear the 3 months, they just assume I'll be on the lower end of that. I have no idea why people make that assumption because like how the fuck could you know that you're going to fall on the lower end? But people do. And if you do fall on that, like, so you assume that you're going to take 3 months, which means you start studying in June. Well, let's say you don't take 3 months because most people don't take 3 months. Most people take longer. And now you're not going to be done until let's say 7 months later, which is like January. Like now you're applying so late and offers get so much worse. I'm not going to go through the whole timeline of why applying later hurts because for one, I've done it many times. And then second, it takes a while to really fully explain. But the basic gist of it is that the later you apply, the worse it gets. So aim to be done early, as in take the June or the August LSAT. Because here's the other thing, like applications don't get terrible applying with the the November LSATs are off. But like if you take September or October, it's like not a big deal. But the issue is that when people aim for October, similarly to aiming for the 3-month window, if it takes any longer, if anything goes wrong in their prep, now they've been pushed back. So it's kind of like aim for the moon, you may end up among the stars. If you aim for the stars, you may just fall short. And it's one of those things where people just don't listen to this. I don't know why, but like you guys need to start studying. This is not some self-interested thing. People study all around the year, but I promise you that you can legitimately push your life plans back by a year if you don't start studying for the LSAT in a proper timeline. So I really would. And you don't have to, like fundamentally, once again, as with all LSAT advice, it's your life. If you don't want to, that's fine. What I'm here to say is if you push it off until like June or May, you may push yourself back a year, which, it's your call, but I would not want to do that because like, what's the sacrifice? Start studying for an hour a day, a month earlier versus the other sacrifice, which is move your life back by a year, have to find employment, have to figure out what you're doing for a year, like have to find a new place to live if your like lease is up. Because you could have been starting law school, but because some of you, and I know I'm saying some of you are not going to start studying because you don't want to study for another month because you're procrastinating. And this could legitimately cause you to not go to law school in fall of 2026. Or it could cause you to go, but now you're going to pay $150,000 more than you would have. So not studying for a month could cost you like $150,000 in tuition. These are not made up numbers. This is absolutely real. And anyways, it blows my fucking mind that you guys don't take this seriously. Like the more I do LSAT, the more I realize like some people just aren't meant to go to law school, and that's fine. But like if starting to study this month versus next month is like groundbreaking for you, I don't know. Like it's pretty serious consequences. And then the worst is when some kids like, oh, I have vacation though. I'm like, okay, like go on vacation if you want, but like that's not lawyer shit. Like that's not, I don't know. It's like if you want to be a lawyer, you should, take things seriously, and you don't have to, but also, lawyers are serious. Lawyers aren't like, but I have a trip on spring break. I can't study because I have spring break. If that's you, that's fine. Not here to pass judgment. What I am here to say is like, that's not lawyer shit. Okay. Cool. And then we have a past student situation, which we're going to go through. They sent me their admissions update and they said that so numbers, they had a 3.81 and a 163 LSAT, and they got rejected from UNC Chapel Hill, which they put in parentheses. I know someone who got in with a 3.7 and 162, but is a legacy. So then they have the shrugging emoji, which is a little amusing. So it's possible that there could be other reasons they got in. That person could be URM. I don't know. They could also, which for what it's worth, that means underrepresented minority, which means Black or Hispanic, which still get a large boost in law school admissions, despite what affirmative action Supreme Court case says. I will tell you, as someone who works with a lot of folks, it is not the same when you're applying as different races. The outcomes are very different. Anyways, so they got rejected from UNC, which also could be due to your essays. Like, I don't know what your essays are. You could have written like a psycho. At UF, you got waitlisted. That's Florida. At Baylor, you got in for spring, but waitlisted for fall. That's odd. I don't know what Baylor's deal is, but I guess they have a spring term. And also, it's just impossible to keep track of these schools. Occasionally, people are like, how do you not know about that? I'm like, well, because there's 200 schools and they're constantly changing things. At FIU, they got a full ride. And then at the University of Miami, they got $58,000 a year in tuition, but tuition is $64K. So it's $8,000 for them to attend the University of Miami. So obviously, with those being the two schools they're into, they said they're between Miami and FIU. They don't know what school to choose, and they're not 100% sure what type of law they want to pursue. But they are interested in many things, which makes it a little bit more difficult. What should they do? So yeah, first off, let's look at their employment. So we'll pull up FIU's ABA employment report. Every law school in the country has one of these reports. And in it, you can see exactly how their class places. And what we'll find is that FIU will not place as well as Miami. Miami will have better employment. The question is it worth another $8,000 per year, which, is relatively minimal as far as tuition goes, but it's not zero. So FIU has 152 graduates, out of which 19 go to big law and 2 go to federal clerkship. So that is 21 out of 152. Not a math guy, but that's like 15%. That is 13.8% out of FIU that go to high paid jobs. Out of Miami, let's pull up their ABA employment report. I know it's higher because I'm familiar with Miami. I believe it's roughly 25%, but we can find the actual number. So Miami's a bigger school. They have 400 grads, 389 to be precise, out of which 96 go to big law, and then 1 goes to a federal clerkship. So that's 97 out of 389, which is going to be 24.9% in comparison to FIU's 13.8%. So if you want a high paid job, I would probably go to Miami, especially considering that it's only $8,000 a year. I know FIU is also in the city of Miami, so I imagine living expenses are similar. I am not a Miami expert though, so I don't know what the regions of Miami are. Maybe one region is cheaper and another region is more expensive. But either way, Miami has better employment. That being said, 25% is not a guarantee. You can very well go to Miami and not get those high paid jobs. In fact, many people will go to Miami and not. So I would just be very aware that you can go and you can, have not the outcome that you had hoped for. So I would just be very careful that if you are indeed attending Miami, that it's not a guarantee. And then if you don't want to do big law at all, I would just go to FIU. Because say you're not sure whether you want to do family law or wills or work for the DA, then I would just go to FIU because you're not going to make the money anyway. So who cares if you're going to the schools that's going to get you more opportunities to make more money because that's not your goal. And I'd asked, and she said, well, let's see. Do they mention big law? Yeah, they don't mention big law. And I think I told her to, yeah, I don't know what I told her. Anyways, I won't read the whole thing. It's a lot about scholarship negotiation. Basically, I told her she can ask Miami for more because you can always just ask. The worst they can say is no. Even the law schools that say we don't negotiate, that's a negotiation tactic. I can't believe some of you fall for that, where they say you don't negotiate. You're just oh, my school doesn't negotiate. You just believe them. Guys, you can you have power. You can just say, I'm not going to come here. Here's the offer that would make me come here. What are you going to do about it? And they might say we don't want you that much. We're not going to make you an offer. But they also might. I mean, it genuinely is impressive that people believe them when they say we don't negotiate. I would be very careful. Anyways, that's a whole side tangent, but a lot of you treat these admissions officers like they tell you the truth and they just don't. But that's besides the point. Anyways, today, because we're kind of on a hater episode, we're reading through a personal statement that another LSAT person wrote. If anyone's who wrote this? I'm very curious. This is initials BB. That is their initials. I won't go deeper than that, but if you're deep in the LSAT world, you can figure out what it is. And the reason I read this is because it's not good. This is a bad personal, well, I shouldn't say it's bad. I should say it's poorly edited. This is not going to help someone get into law school. I put it into Grammarly and Grammarly lit it up. It had all sorts of things it corrected. In fact, let's do that as I read it, just so that I can tell you everything that Grammarly is pointing out. And I'm not talking stylistic edits. I'm talking objectively, that is not English and you can't say that. So let me pull this up. Beautiful. So this is a personal statement. This is fully edited, supposedly. It is also 11-point font, which is terrible. 11-point font looks terrible on the eyes. I know as people writing essays, you probably can't tell, but I will tell you as someone who looks at essays, we can tell. And you know what admissions officers do all day? They look at essays. So I would write 11-point font. Further, 2 pages, 11-point font is 900 words, whereas 2 pages, 12-point font is 600 words. And I think what it shows is that you're not writing very well when you have to use all 900 words. It's just because what you'll find is that there's not 900 words of content in here. There's a lot of filler. And so it's a lot about cutting down. And this person statement is below average. This will probably keep you out of law school if you submitted it. And that is after you had paid someone to edit it, which is why I'm kind of pissed off because this person kind of scammed you, for lack of a better word. So we'll start with the first sentence. And they say, my trust within the justice system was halted at the age of 8. And already Grammarly is saying within is the wrong preposition. You're supposed to use the preposition in there. That is Grammarly. Grammarly is $10 a month. I can't believe that was not caught. But also, what have we learned about you? We learned that you don't trust the justice system. Okay, I mean, I guess that's kind of a generic opening. A lot of people talk about their experiences. I'm also seeing you as an 8-year-old. These are not reasons to admit you to law school. So already I'm not loving the opening. I would prefer like what you're doing as an adult, or like why you're going to be a kick-ass lawyer, not like an 8-year-old who had some experience, but sure. They continue. The firsthand experiences navigating child abuse and neglect, exposure to violence, family economic, and court proceedings between both of my parents led me to require the services of a child attorney. All right, that's a brutal sentence. The subject there, before you get to the verb, is 22 words long. And it's like, okay, so I guess you're saying that you were abused, neglected, you saw violence, your family had economic hardship, your parents were being divorced, and you got this attorney who was like an advocate for you. I don't know. Once again, it's not about you. It's about like your childhood experience, which would be a diversity statement, if anything. They continue. The experience from start to finish was horrific. Listening to my attorney manipulate my words in front of my parents in a 15-minute, which you missed a hyphen, court hearing, missed a comma, which felt like a never-ending nightmare. So yeah, I mean, this is like, I mean, so what's the content? Because the writing is rough, honestly. But the content more broadly is like your attorney is, I guess, not really doing a good job for you. So maybe you're going to say like, oh, I want to like succeed in the way that my attorney failed me. I mean, maybe you can make that argument, but even still, I don't love it because it's not about you. It's about you as an 8-year-old and like being victimized, which is just not interesting. It's like, okay, cool. You had a tough experience. A lot of people have tough experiences. That doesn't mean they should be lawyers. They continue. Well, it was just another case for her, comma, started the deep decline of, wait, no, you don't, you shouldn't have a comma there. Should you? Started the deep decline. Yeah, no, you can't have a comma there. That's wrong. Grammarly didn't catch that, but that's incorrect. Started the deep decline of the relationship between my parents and I. Between your parents and me, I believe. Although, let me check that, see if Grammarly tells me, because I think you're a direct object there. Yeah, that's my parents and me. Grammarly's not catching everything. It's like not activating because it's in Google Docs. Anyways, this is like terribly, like this was not edited. I don't know what this person, how much did they charge you? Because like this is bad. Like, anyways, and now it called the comma. Now it's saying to remove the comma that I was identifying, but they continue. Knowing how challenging, and for what's worth, we are also still in the first paragraph. We are like 7 lines in, still in the first paragraph. And we're like not even halfway done. Knowing how challenging it was to independently reroute myself to becoming a first-generation college graduate from a product of my environment, given my environmental circumstances, I knew dedicating the next decade to assisting at-risk clients who, all facing different challenges, was an insightful choice to me, as I have a passion about learning more about the juvenile justice system and ensure those I come across do not feel a negative stigma by those who should be upholding the law while ensuring client satisfaction. All right. And I read that because I wanted to show you how long that is. That is 84 words in one sentence. I mean, honestly, after reading it, I don't even know what they said. I don't know that the LSAT reading comp ever has sentences that long. That is terrible. That needs to be broken up into multiple sentences. Further, the idea is really relatively straightforward, which is you had negative experiences and you want to help other children avoid them. And you want to be an attorney that like is, I guess, more ethical and does better things, which is nice. Also, 84 words here. That is rough. The fact that that was not caught blows my mind. That is a terrible sentence. Like that's just like going to keep you out. I think it's very likely that many law schools, upon reading that sentence, will just throw your application straight in the garbage. They're like, we're not, this person doesn't know how to write. Not to be harsh, but like that's a really bad sentence. And you, for one, get Grammarly. Grammarly will tell you like, hey, you shouldn't write that. That is not good. Further, I mean, it's not even the ideas. Like, don't get me wrong, the ideas aren't great. They're relatively boring and generic, but you could even just break it up and it'll help it. Like if you just like break that into different sentences, it'll help a lot. But they continue. Redacted name. A mentor I had in college still inspires me to achieve client satisfaction as she expressed great attentiveness and my own self-fulfillment. I do not care about your mentor. I care about what you did. Knowing someone saw potential and cared about how I exploited it was a pivot point where I started to develop a sense of confidence, especially as so-and-so resembled physical characteristics of my own. Okay, so yeah, once again, like I don't really care. Also, it's a 33-word sentence. Like you write 2 long sentences. You got to write shorter sentences. I was able to associate myself with her similar situation of family financial burdens, pausing her educational goals. So you missed a comma there, which, I mean, it's just brutal how many things just that are objectively grammar mistakes that you're missing. Like, I mean, should I make like an attack post on this person? Like, this is disgusting what they're doing. Anyways, this is not good. They continue. Listening to her articulate long-term goals as a first-year law student empowered me to do more that align with my future goals. I don't care about your mentor. Like, just cut all of this. Like, none of this is relevant. I don't care that you had a mentor. It just does not belong. I care about you and why we're admitting you to law school. This person's already in law school, and I just don't care about her. They continue. She recommended I participate in a mock trial at the University of Buffalo. Experiencing unity and cohesiveness while in a competition made me feel confident and resourceful. I don't care how you feel. I care what you did. These are not reasons to admit you to law school. Like, I don't know. It's just not, this isn't moving the ball forward. So much so, missing comma, I started a family court internship at the very court, missing comma, or sorry, missing prepositional phrase, which is where my hearing at 8 years old took place. Intellectually intertwining with a plethora of colleagues, missing comma, networking, and sharing similar goals of advocating for clients and injustice is ideal for my everyday with a hyphen between every and day, although that's every day is just one word, everyday employment environment. Yeah, yikes. I mean, that's like, we just don't care. I don't care what you want to do. I have learned nothing about you to accept you to law school. So far, you've not moved the ball forward and you have written, honestly, relatively poorly. Like, this is like, these are personal statements that just aren't going to get you in. And it's hard because, like, I don't blame you. I blame the person who, like, quote unquote edited this. And like, this is not good. But and we're not even halfway through. Because here's the other things. Like, although I feel exhausted having read this, we're not even halfway through. And that's where it gets brutal. In 2022, the second month working with juveniles on probation through the Raise the Age program in Redacted County, I was tasked with aligning a client closer to their educational and financial goals. Yeah, I'd say that a lot shorter. I mean, that's a context sentence, and it was 33 words long. 33 words for a basic, I helped a client. Like, in one circumstance, I helped a client. Like, just get right into it. A barrier this client faced was alcohol abuse, consuming approximately a liter daily. Okay, so for one, that's passive voice. They didn't face this barrier. They are an alcoholic. I mean, how you phrase it, you can phrase it however you want, but I would just say that they were an alcoholic. That's not necessarily a negative. Well, I mean, it is negative, but like, you don't have to like say like, therefore they're worth this person. You don't say like this very passive, like, oh, they faced alcohol abuse. Like, no, they were an alcoholic. It is what it is. Just say that. They continue. When initially meeting the client to start the intake paperwork, they didn't respond to many questions or stared directly at me with a snarl if they did answer. And that is 28 words. I mean, hard cap 25. These sentences are way too long. Breaking down their stigma of a provider versus client divide was key to formulating a process we both entrusted emotionally and mentally. So I do like that you're actually telling the story, but I would go deeper into what you actually did. This feels very generic, or like not very generic, very broad. I can't actually see what you're doing. I don't know what you're doing with this person, how you're helping them. They said, and oh my Lord, another brutal sentence. I did so by being transparent about who I was personally and elaborated on shared characteristics between us both that the client opened about on the first meeting, such as color, obesity, gender, age, being an only child with strained parental relationships, and being a teenager with limited resources. So that is 49 words in that sentence, which is way too long. I mean, as far as connecting to them on a human level and saying we share these things and you were able to help them, that's actually a nice thought. But it's almost hard to get that because like it's hard to even see past the writing. And I'll just be very careful there. They continue though. A rapport was now starting to develop and visits were great for the next 2 weeks and alcohol use decreased significantly. Okay, so I guess you saw helped them for 2 weeks, although you do continue the story. So I guess I'm getting ahead of myself. Anyways, the point is like, I like that you're telling the story. I'd really clean up the writing, but this is better than what you had earlier. Like I would just start with working with this person. It's much more interesting. They continue. 3 weeks after being assigned a case, the client displayed signs of non-engagement by not responding to phone calls for almost a week. Yeah, I wouldn't say that they displayed signs of non-engagement. I would just say like after 3 weeks, they would not pick up my calls. Like just get to the point. It's the same meaning, but it says it simpler and it's so much easier to read. They continue. After the 6th day of no communication, I got off an overnight shift at my other job of 10 hours and drove to the street of our last visit. Feels kind of like shoehorned in there, but okay. Approaching my vehicle, I heard a wailing cry as someone gasped for breath. I looked over and it was my client standing with their face in their hands. The wailing cries I heard mentally took me back to where I could physically feel myself at 16. Just having been kicked out of the house by my father in the middle of a winter snowstorm in days-old clothes, without shoes, wandering to walk left or right. That is a 50-word sentence. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things that Grammarly wants to correct in terms of punctuation, spelling, hyphens, and commas. So I would be very careful there. You just want to like just really run this through Grammarly. Like you don't have to pay me. I mean, I'm happy to help you, but like Grammarly will just do a wonder on this. Anyways, what else did we learn? Well, this person that they're helping is crying, and I guess that's bringing them back to their childhood, which I don't want to see you back in your childhood. I want to see you kicking ass and helping this person. So yeah, anyways, let's continue. Rolling down the window, asking what was wrong, they made me aware that they were kicked out, had property stolen, and their phone screen was non-functioning. I'll just say their phone screen was broken. Like non-functioning is such a weird word to use. After transporting them to a youth shelter, tallying up my loose coins for their screen repair, that's such a weird verb, also tallying. I'd say like collecting. I mean, you guys got to put away the thesaurus. Use simple words. Like this is someone who I think is trying to write fancily, but it's making your writing a lot worse. They continue. And gathering clothes from my personal closet and local thrift shops, it was now 2 p.m. later that day. 2 p.m. later but we didn't never talked about the time earlier. So like I hate that you're now mentioning the time because we never talked about the time. Because I think the point here is like, oh, you spent all this time working on the case. But I don't even know if you spent all this time, because what if you started the call at 12 p.m.? Like what if you because I guess the assumption here is that you started at like 8 in the morning. And yeah, well, I guess you said you had an overnight shift. Anyways, it's just you have to connect the dots, and there's too much going on here. It's hard to even keep track. Like this is really hard to read. I'll be honest. They continue. Drive, and by hard to read, I don't mean like in terms of content. I mean in terms of like the writing. Like it's just like hard to even get through. They continue. Driving back to the shelter with a $5 meal from Wendy's, I wanted to prove to this client that someone would show up for them, regardless of having to be clocked in at work or requiring reimbursement. I don't care what you want, just talk about what you did. Also, word count, that is 37 words in one sentence. They continue. After 7 months of living at the shelter and working with the program, this client maintained consistent employment, a savings account, their GED, and most importantly, overcame alcoholism. Word count, 28 words. We still keep in contact to this day as they still abstain from alcohol and gain access to a union job. Yeah, so I would tell this story and tell it better in more simple words. Like I don't hate this story. Like you helped someone, here's what you did. But you say it in a rough way, it's hard to even get through it. They continue though. Becoming an attorney would make me the first in my family to have a career and give me the opportunity to redirect today's youth. That's fine. I understand the importance of having both a sound foundation and a dedication to consistent study while maintaining a community footprint and advocating for the rights of children and families. I'd make that shorter. Also, like conclusion should be like 2 to 3 short sentences, and that's another 30-worder. I mean, these are brutal sentences. And then their final sentences, I would like to work pro bono after law school to be able to accurately gauge the issues of today's youth, and I believe dedicating myself to a learning environment that emphasizes the rights of children is most beneficial to myself and the learning community, which is a 44-word sentence. Yeah, I mean, this is rough. Like, this is not a good essay. This is going to probably keep you out of law schools. Largely for the writing, the content, I mean, the content's not great, I'll be real, but also it's not terrible. Like, there are some, I'd say, shining through nice pieces in terms of like helping out your client. You actually did things, but we don't get there. And also when we do get there, it's still hidden behind very clunky writing, and that makes it very hard to read. So I would ask for a refund. I mean, you're welcome to send this audio to this person. I mean, I might send this to them and be like, hey, maybe stop charging for essays until you figure out what the fuck you're like doing, because this person doesn't know what they're doing. And anyways, it's yeah, I mean, I wish I had more nice things to say about it. I'd say the big thing is the story is interesting if you can tell it. Like, I'll be real, no admissions officers are going to get to the story because they're like, I'm not reading that shit. Like, this is too hard to read. This is like brutal. But you could get it to a way that is better and that they'll actually, you know, pay attention. But this is not it. I mean, cut the whole mentor paragraph, which for what it's worth, that mentor paragraph is not short. It is 171 words, which is a third of the average person statement. Also, 12-point font, people. I know you all don't see the difference because you guys don't look at documents all day between 11 and 12. I will tell you 12-point font looks better. And what I see is that people's 12-point essays tend to do better. And I don't necessarily know that it's the font size. I think part of it is due to the fact that when someone writes in 12-point font, they're a little bit more precise with their language too. And I think that shines through. But if you can't write 2 pages double-spaced in 12-point font, I think you're not writing very well. Because I promise you there's plenty that you can cut. Like all of, like this, we could cut down to like 2 good paragraphs here. And they would have 200 words to work off of, even though they had 900 right now. But there's like 200 worth salvaging. So anyways, yeah, I mean, this person, I can't believe someone edited this. Like, it's just, yeah, it's not good. Yeah, I don't know. I'm like genuinely confused. I'm like, why the fuck? Like, how is this an edited statement? This is so bad. And yeah, anyways, it's hard to even believe. But anyways, what else do we have? Because we'll call it today. This will be a shorter one, but if you have anything, shoot in your email. I'll figure out some segments going forward, do some fun stuff. And yeah, I'll see you all next week. If you enjoyed what we talked about today or learned something new, please leave a review or a rating. It really does help us out and helps us reach more people. If you have a question or anything you want talked about in the world of LSAT or law school admissions, you can always email support@HeyFutureLawyer.com to get it in the podcast agenda. Just put podcast in the subject and we will talk about it on the show. Alrighty, that's all we have for today. So I will see you all next time.